Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidyadravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So where are we in our text? I think we're starting a new chapter, are we not?
Yes, we are. Chapter 18.
Does it have a title?
Tattvamsi Prakaranam. Thou art that. Yenatmana viliyante udbhavanti cha vrittayaha nityavagataye tasmai namo dhi pratyayatmane. I bow down to that eternal consciousness, the self of the modifications of the intellect, in which they merge and from which they spring.
Yes. So what are the modifications of the intellect at the macro level, waking, dream, and deep sleep? At a more insular, individual level, my various thoughts, feelings, memories, images. Those that are agitating, maybe fear, control, anger. And those that are more beneficent, joy, happiness, etc. All these are modifications. And of course, the modification of ahankriti, the rise and fall of the ego idea, the ch18, the reflection of consciousness caught in the web of thought. That is ever before me. I witness that eternal play. Never touches me. The thunderous message of Vedanta is if I stay identified with that sakshi, that witness, then I'm no longer afflicted by these various movements. So, what is the God that we worship? All the various names and forms, Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, Kali, Durga, Jesus, are all masks that the infinite wears. Gita Krishna says, in whatever way people approach me, so am I to them. But the eternal factor is avyupadesham. Speech cannot go there. We can't really even talk about it. Yet it is directly known. Be myself. Next verse.
Brahmatya Vrajopa Mayukti Samrite Shuta Pratin Inshadasho Vacho Sibhita Raraksha Vedartha Nithim Vishaladhira Namo Yatin Priyaya Guru Gurur Gariyase. I bow down to the great mendicant, the teacher of my teacher, who, of great intellect, routed hundreds of enemies of the Shruti by means of words comparable to swords, made impenetrable through thunder-like reasoning, and protected the treasure of the real import of the Vedas.
So the teacher of my teacher, Shankara's teacher was a guru by the name of Govindapada. Govindapada's teacher was Gaudapada, who is the author of the famous Karika that we find in the Mandukya Upanishad. I'm not sure if other works have been attributed to him. There might be, but I can't bring them to mind right now. But what was happening in India? So we date Shankara usually as 788 to 820. So maybe go back a generation for Govinda. So maybe the 680s, and then maybe another 20, 30 years for Gaudapada. So we're talking about the mid to early 7th century. 7th century. No, 8th century. Anyway, about that time. So what had happened since the time of Ashoka in about 300 BCE, at least the north of India had largely converted to Buddhism. Were Hindus still there? Were they practicing Hinduism? Yes, they were. But what we think is the major emphasis was on what we call the Karma Kanda portion of the Vedas. You know, the Vedas are usually divided into 4 sections. The Samhita, the mantra portion, which are hymns which the priests use when they perform ritual. Then there's the Brahmanas, which are the rubrics, the instructions. When you do this particular puja, you need 3 priests and you need to build the altar this way, and they're to chant this mantra and that mantra, etc. Then there's a series of literature called the Aranyakas, forest literature, which is part upasana, worship, and there's some philosophy. And then there's the concluding portion of the Vedas, the Upanishads, which concern the nature of ultimate reality. But another way to parse the Vedas is there's what we call a karma kanda. And in the early use of the word karma, it didn't mean just action like we use today, oh, good karma, bad karma. It was used to mean ritual action. So if you were a Brahmin, you had to do Agnihotra, you had to do all these various rituals to order the universe. That was one of the jobs of the Brahmins. They did this ritual so that the universe would keep doing what it's supposed to do. And then there's the Jnana Kanda, the knowledge portion, which is the Upanishads. So there was a great emphasis on the ritual portion. And what Gaudapada, Govindapada, and Shankara did was engage in debate. Now, in that particular historical period, if you engaged in debate with someone of a different philosophical school, using logic and rooting it in the Vedas, if you defeated them philosophically, then they came over to your school of thought. See? So here what Shankara is saying is, oh, Gaudapada had a mind like a sword, and he was able to point out the fallacy in the logic, the fallacy in the reasoning, the incorrect interpretation of scripture, and defeated all these people. Another interpretation. You and I have different ideas of the infinite. I was chatting with a person last night who said, I didn't used to be an atheist, but now I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist because I cannot believe in a God that looks out for me and allows women to be raped in the Sudan. Very good point. So what yogis do is say, obviously, we need to deepen and refine our understanding of the infinite based on the kind of thinking we get in Shruti and scripture. He, on the other hand, said, it can't be true. Out it goes. So these issues are not just ones that occur 1,300 years ago. They're issues that occur today. So this is a second mangalam, a second blessing in the beginning of this chapter. Going on, next one.
Nitya mukta sadevasmi devam chenna bhavenmateha kimartham shravayattveva matrivachru tiradarat. If the conviction, I am nothing but existence and am ever free, were impossible to be attained, why should this Shruti teach us that so affectionately like a mother?
Yes. Nitya mukta, eternally free. So here Shankara is dealing with the doubt. Does liberation, does freedom really exist? Or is the way 99.99% of all the people live life, is that just the way it is? Is it all just superstition and hope? And everybody, as Hamlet says, runs and sweats under a weary life with that dread of death. a little bit of happiness, a good meal, falling in love, maybe having children, but always, always surrounded by sorrow, 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 war, violence, lack. How can there be freedom? None of it matters. Is that reality? And here Shankara says, well, the scripture, like a mother, keeps telling us there is a way to cross the ocean of samsara. There is a way to be free, not just for moments. But he says, nitya, eternally. So in Vivekachudamani, before Shankara starts on his marvelous discourse on the qualifications of a fit student, he will say one who can argue for scriptures and refute arguments against them is fit. And this doesn't mean to have philosophical data wars at your next cocktail party. Doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't mean to have flaming arguments on Facebook. It means when my mind doubts the truth that's put forward in Shruti, the higher part of my mind can argue against. Now, one of the stories about Swamiji that I love, many of you know Swamiji was a journalist before he took sannyas, when he was still Balan Menon. And there are several versions of the story. Some say he was in an existential crisis and he went up to Rishikesh to resolve that. Others say he was a Marxist, an atheist, and he went up there to write an expose on the gurus. The Marxist notion, religion is the opiate of the populace. Many, many secular Indians of that age who had had Western educations thought all this Hindu ritual and praying to gods for this, that, and the other thing was all superstition. So in the wonderful film On a Quest, you see the young Menon having, young Balan having a talk with Swami Shivananda. And he says, all this stuff with the gods and the ritual and stuff like that, it's all superstition. It's all superstition. And you know what Shivananda says? You're right. But in the Upanishads, there is something that's real. Now, Vedanta never asks us to believe anything on blind faith. We need to have faith the way a scientist has faith. This past year, the movie Oppenheimer came out. I think that was the name of, was that right?
Yeah.
And it was about the creation of the first atomic bomb. Well, before the test explosion, where was it? It was in White Sands, I think.
Okay.
Trinity. Anyway, the whole point was before that, it was all theoretical. It was all just mathematics. If you do X, Y, and Z, you should get A, B, C. And they didn't know. They hoped it would work. I mean, there were some physicists who thought it would ignite the entire atmosphere and burn the whole Earth down.
Mm-hmm.
It might have just been nothing happened. So they were scientists, meaning they had theoretical hypotheses. Then they performed empirical experiments to prove or disprove the theory. That's the scientific method. Vedanta proceeds in exactly the same way. We have spiritual hypotheses. I am Atma Brahma. The self in you is what God is. What is this God? The Jnanam Brahma. This God is consciousness itself. So, the Vedanta says, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. So, that is our theorem. Now, let us perform the experiments to prove or disprove it in the laboratory of my own direct experience. What is the experiment? Atma Vichara. Inquiry into the nature of the self. How do we do this? All of this is implied in the Mahavakya Tattvamasi. You are that. And Swamiji had a scientific mind. And he took Shivananda at his word. And one of the things he talks about, he was one of the few people in the whole ashram that was actually doing what the Guru suggested. Believe me, I had much the same experience when I was in the ashram. People were there for all sorts of different reasons. Swamiji wanted the knowledge. Then Shivananda sent him up the Ganga to Uttarkashi to work with Swami Thakur. Deep. He came out of the Himalayas thundering. It's true. It's true. So Mother Shruti keeps handing us not only the great philosophical promise, but also the methodology, the way to experiment. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Siddha devaha mityasmad dushma dharmo nishidhyate rajvamivahithiryuktya tattvamityadeshasaneha. Just as the idea of a snake is negated from a rope in a rope snake, so everything of the nature of the non-self is negated from the eternally existing self implied by the word I, on the evidence of the Shrutis, thou art that, etc., in which the implied meanings of the words have been ascertained by reasoning and the scripture.
So he introduces us to two important ideas here. The first is, and we've gone over this so many times, adhyasa, superimposition. And he's using the classic Vedantic metaphor of snakes and ropes. Rajju sarpa. So I won't go into the various stories that I've used to illustrate it, but the idea is there is a rope on the ground. But I mistake the rope for a snake. Because I mistake the rope for a snake, I'm frightened and paralyzed because I think I'm going to get bitten by the snake. Now, we're invited to understand what is adhyasa, superimposition. It means something is there, the rope. Notice I don't superimpose an elephant. I don't superimpose a banyan tree. I don't superimpose a rhinoceros or a lion. The rope is thin and long. So what I superimpose is something, well, it's kind of like it. The snake is thin and long. The rope looks something like a snake. Elephant doesn't look like a rope. So, what happens in my mind? I superimpose on the ground of being this vast, empty chid akasha, space of pure awareness. I do not superimpose an elephant or a rhinoceros or a banyan tree. I superimpose ahankara, a thought of self, an idea of self, jiva bhavana, in the subtle intellect. There exists this function, the karta, the agent. And in the subtle intellect, I think the reflection of consciousness, this chitchaya, this pratibimba, is a real self. And he says the way to remove this superimposition, ch18, by means of investigation. So I've superimposed a snake on the rope. Carefully listen. Getting out a baseball bat and beating up the snake will never make it turn into a rope. How many of us beat ourselves up? Oh, I'm such a terrible person. How could I have done that? Oh, I'm so awful. I'm so ashamed. I have such regret. Anybody ever do that? How's that working out for you? It's not even a gradual process. I've been doing rope yoga now for 20 years. I have succeeded in turning the head of the snake into a rope. Still working on the whole rest of it. Yes, I've been studying Vedanta for 20 years now. I think I'm getting close to it. You either see it, you don't. Why don't I see it? Looking in the wrong direction, or the mind is too agitated. Look, Jim, that's not a snake, it's a rope. Yeah, but there's a tree over there, and it's really big. Jim, the rope is down there. Look at the rope. Oh, but then there's an elephant over there going down the street. No, Jim, look where the snake seems to be, and you'll find the rope. That's my problem. My husband, my wife, my child, my job, my home, my friends. No, don't worry about that. Koham, who are you? Now, the second thing that Shankara suggests in this verse is we have to use the method of lakshana. Lakshana means inferred or implied meaning. So if we take a literalistic interpretation of Tattvamasi, you are that, it seems absurd. You, Jim, are God. That's kind of ridiculous. I'm not infinite, all knowing. I'm old, things hurt, I can't see anymore, my memory isn't what it used to be. I can't make the streetlights change. And I certainly can't make all the people around me behave. How can I be God? It's an absurdity. It's not true. The scripture's not telling the truth. And Shankara says, wait a minute. You're using a literalistic understanding of Tattvamasi. We have to look at the implied meaning. And the classic exegesis of this Mahavakya is to do what I call a striptease. Not just take your clothes off, take everything off. I am not the body. I am not the prana. I am not the mind. I am not the intellect. I am not even the bliss sheet. What am I? Witnessing consciousness. God, Tat, is not this phenomenal world. It's not the total mind. It's not even Ishvara, the controller of everything, the total vasana. It is Brahman. It is conscious. Listen carefully. I am Atma, that witnessing conscious. Brahma, Brahman are the same thing. Tat Tvamasi, you are. So we use the implied meaning, the inferred meaning of both you and that to arrive at this understanding that they are the same. And this particular Mahavakya is traditionally called the Upadesha Mahavakya, the instructional great utterance. So all the various practices of yoga are implied in this verse, or this saying. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Shastra Pramana Yato Kyeyo Dharma Derastita Yatha Vishapoha Yatha Dhyanad Hanuti Syat Papmanastatha. Brahman should be regarded as the self on the evidence of the scriptures, just as religious duties are known from the same source. Ignorance vanishes immediately on the attainment of right knowledge, like the effect of poison coming to an end when mantras are remembered.
Yes. So, for those people of deep Shraddha, deep faith, they can rely simply on the evidence of the scripture itself. That is our ultimate authority. And the scripture says, the core of your being, the essence of who you are, what God is, they are the same. Believe it. Let go of false identifications. Others of us, well, how do I know Shruti is right? So go through the process, quieten the mind, renounce attachment to the phenomenal world, give up control issues, give up personal sense of identification. And at an auspicious moment, mind ceases its vimarsha, its deliberation. Notice who you are. This is the pratyabhijnana, this recognition. This is aparoksha jnanam, direct experience. Now, in the tradition, we actually have 4 pramanas. Pramana means an authority, but it also means a means of knowledge. The first and most authoritative, I'm going to turn my hand around this way, it's easier. The first is Shruti, what the Upanishads declare. So if you come across a teaching that teaches something other than that, that's not primary source. Suspect it. I was talking with a student who had some health trouble. Their stomach was upset. And they went to an Ayurvedic doc here in the States. And they were doing a specific chant, v13. And the doc says, oh, you have to stop that because what's causing your stomach trouble is you're trying to get your Atman out of your body. Now, you know, from the standpoint of being a Vedantan, what that doctor said, sure they were sincere and well-meaning, but it was absurd. This is, you know, probably a well-respected Ayurvedic doctor. What he said did not correspond with Shruti. Second pramana, Smriti. Here it means the recorded evidence of the great saints and sages and avatars through history. Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, but also people like Shankara, people like Ramana Maharshi, people like Swami Tapovana, Chinmay, who thunder. It's true, it's true, it's true. Third pramana, your own logical reasoning. In the beginning, some of these utterances of the scriptures may seem, whoa! The one that I think is so clear on that. Go to Padaskarika in Mandukya, 2nd chapter, 4th Karika. Basically says the phenomenal world is quite unreal, and the proof of its unreality is you can see it. That seems absurd. But then he goes through why that's so. It is true. And finally, in the white heat of your own meditation, your own direct experience is the fourth pramana. All right, next verse.
For two together.
Okay.
Sat brahmaham karomiti pratyayavatma sakshiko tayor jnana jasyeva tyago yukta taro mantaha sadasmiti pramanotha Hiranya tannibhodbhava pratyakshadini bhavapi pathyate digphramaditvat. It is reasonable that of the two ideas, I am existence Brahman, and I am an agent, both of which have the self for their witness, the one owing its origin to ignorance should be given up. Springing from evidences which are only apparently so, sense, for example, sense perceptions, etc., it gets negated like a mistaken notion of a direction by the other one, which has its source in the right evidence of the Vedas.
Yes. So in the Vedas it says, I am Brahman. Here, my surface belief is I am an agent. I do this, I don't do that. I am the body. I go here, I don't go there. They are contradictory. We can examine which is true and which is not true. We start by paying attention to what Shruti says. Shruti says, no, you're not the agent. The agent is Guna and Karma. You are Brahman. Okay? How do I come to that? We use the method called neti neti. Na iti, na iti. Not this, not this. Scriptures never say just neti, and they never say neti, neti, neti. It's always neti, neti, the two. Why? Because it's a negation of my personal equipment and at the macrocosmic level to come to the idea the self in me is the self in all. So, what is the methodology of neti neti? If it has a beginning and an end, if it occurs in time and space, if it has qualities and characteristics, if it's in the world of phenomenal objects, emotions, or thoughts. Most importantly, if it can be objectively apprehended, meaning there's a subject-object relationship. That is anatman, not self. Fundamental practice. So simple. Do you see the coffee table?
Yes.
Are you a coffee table?
No.
Sure?
Yes.
How do you know that?
Because I see it, but I'm separate from it.
You are the one who sees the coffee table. Subject, object. Do you hear the sound of the traffic? Are you a traffic noise? No?
No.
How do you know that?
Because I'm the one who hears it.
Subject, object. Now, take a deep breath and feel the breath in the body itself. Can you feel your body sitting on the sofa? Yes?
Yes.
Do you have a subject object relationship with that knowledge? You are not the body. You know the body. Just in the same way you know the table or the sound of the traffic. Sometimes I feel fabulous energy. I go, what was the ecstatic dancing? Other times, oh, I didn't sleep well last night. I got up and I just feel punk. But you know when there's a lot of prana and when it's do you not know these various forms of the movement of energy? Don't you know them?
Yeah.
You are not energy. subject, object, not this. Now we go to the level of mind. Sometimes I feel joy. Sometimes I feel sorrow. Sometimes I'm really angry. Sometimes I feel so loving. Sometimes I feel great enthusiasm for something. Sometimes I'm just bored. Don't you have this palette? It's like a painter. All the colors of our feelings. Don't you have them?
Yes.
Don't you know them? I am not my feelings. I'm the knower of my feelings. Now to the level of the intellect. In your head, do the problem 2 plus 2. Say the sentence, Mary had a little lamb inside your head. Visualize a strawberry. Remember what you had for breakfast. That place is the intellect. The thoughts go by like your hand in front of your face. But I am not the thoughts. I am the knower of the thoughts. Not this. Now, the subtlest discrimination is between the self and ahankara. When in the subtle intellect, there's a special kind of thought, the thought of the cart of the agent. Good, I'm bad, I'm happy, I'm sad, I am this body, I'm successful, I'm a failure, I am fill in the blank, which gives me the sense that I am a person. We've all had the experience, what I call paranoid self-observation. How am I doing? Am I okay? What do they think of me? Oh, I'm really a piece of crap. I'm not doing very well. I'm feeling a little better. I me mine, I me mine. And at other times, we're lost in dance, or lost in music, or making love, or walking in nature. And that paranoid self-observation thins, at least, if not goes away altogether. Is not that your experience? Yes, no?
Yes.
So you are the witness of the thickening and the thinning of ego. If you can see it, it's not you. I am not the fake news self, the phony self, the chit chai. And I'm not even the darkness of pure ignorance and deep sleep. What am I then? Tune up the mind. Let's listen to the horn outside. Here's what? Here's There's no gym. There's no oddity. It's just Chilakasha, the space of pure awareness. Where did Jim go? This is the kind of Atma Vichara, the proper inquiry that is given to us by Mother Shruti. Next verse.
Guru Bhukteti Yat Shastram Lokabuddha Lokabuddhanyu Vaditat Sadasmiti Shruter Jata Bhathyate Nyayavadhi. When they say, do this, and you are experiencers, the scriptures restate popular conceptions. The knowledge, I am existence, arises from the Shruti. The other, arising from injunctive scriptures, is negated by it.
Yes. So in the Karma Kanda section, the ritual portion, it says, you should sit here next to the fire. You should pour ghee or milk on the murti. You should make a design of these seeds and grains. You should chant this mantra. So in the Karma Kanda, it says you are an agent. That is for those who are still in ignorance. That is for those who are not yet ready for the highest truth. But the Jnana Kanda says, you are not an agent. You are not an experiencer. You are consciousness itself. Let me give you a worldly example. If you study science in the 7th or 8th grade, you will be introduced to Newtonian physics, and you'll probably learn about, who was it who dropped the apple and something else off the Tower of Pisa? Was that Galileo? Can't remember anymore. Anyway, they figured out that all objects fall at the same rate. It's 32 feet per second per second. Well, later on, come to find out, well, that's not really true. Masses are drawn to each other at different rates, depending on their proximity and the density of their mass. So 2 asteroids way out in space near each other, the gravitation between them will bring them very slowly. It may take thousands of years for them to join. But something gets caught in the orbit of the Earth and it plummets to Earth at an incredible speed. Then we go into quantum physics and the whole thing gets goofy. So we have one teaching of science for people who are in ignorance of larger understandings of the physical world. The Vedas do the same thing. You want to have boy babies? Do this puja. You want to find a husband? Chant this mantra. You want to get rich? Propitiate this goddess. But if you want moksha, set that aside. Go for what the Upanishads teach. Now, understand, some people say either or. This is wrong, that's right. No, this is wrong, that's right. Actually, the teaching says they are both of value. The proof that they are of value is that they are in the Vedas. The way to unlock it is to understand they are to be practiced sequentially. We engage in the ritual portion to purify the head and the heart, which makes us available for the deep exercises in contemplation. All right. Next verse.
Sadeva tvamasi tyuktam natmano muktata sthira pravartate prasanchaksham toyuktya nuchintayet. Objection. Absolute liberation does not arise when one is told, "Thou art that." One should, therefore, have recourse to the repetition of the idea, "I am Brahman," and support it with reasoning.
So here the objector says, no, you don't just hear it and then that all of a sudden frees you. You've got to chant the mantra. Aham Brahmasmi, Soham, Soham. That'll get you there. So the objector is saying that liberation is the result of action. Let's see what Shankara says. Going on.
Sakriduktam na krihyate vakyartha gyopi yo bhavet apekshatet evanyad vocham tvayam hi tat. Even acquainted with the literal meaning of the sentence, one, once told, cannot know its true import, but requires other things which, as we have said, are two.
So here, I think this is the further thing of the objection. That, okay, you have to know it, but then there's other things you have to do to enflesh it, to make it yours. Let's see what Shankara says. Going on.
Niyogo pratipannatvat karmanam sa yatha bhavet aviruddho bhavet tavat sanvedyata dridha. Just as an injunction regarding Vedic actions is necessary, so it is not incompatible in the case of one, so long as one has not directly known the self, and its knowledge has not been firmly grasped.
Not sure what he means by that, to be honest. But I think what he's implying is the Vedic injunctions, again in the Karma Kanda, are important. They are preparatory, but they of themselves do not bestow knowledge. So let's keep going and see if he clarifies it a bit more.
In the footnote, it says, even when actions are known from Vedic statements, an injunction regarding them is necessary so that one may get the result arising from the observance of the injunction.
Okay, but again, we're still dealing with actions produce artha, wealth of some sort, results. But is moksha, is liberation the result of an action? Going on.
Cheshtitam cha tatha mithya swachanda pratipadyate prasankhyan matah karyam yavadatmanubhuyate. All one's efforts, for example, self-control, etc., become useless if one can know Brahman without being enjoined. One should, therefore, go on with the repetition so long as the self is not known.
So here what Shankara says is the injunctions in the Vedas, the use of mantra, the use of upasana, the use of yajna, all these are useful as long as you do not know. But once the mind is purified, who am I? Investigate. And again, going back to my classic example I use in the early classes, you need to cut a big tomato with a dull knife, it's going to squish it. So the preparatory exercise is sharpen the knife first. But knife sharpening will not slice the tomato. What's our knife sharpening? Yamas, niyamas, developing the qualifications of a fit student. But how do I slice the tomato? That is staying with Atma, Anatma, Vivechana, investigation. Let's do one more.
Sadsmiti cha vijnanam vijnanamakshyo padhate dhruvam shabdotham tridha sanskaro doshescha krishyate bahi. Firm impressions originating from sense perception do surely negate knowledge I am Brahman arising from the Shruti. Moreover, an aspirant is attracted towards external objects through impurities, such as attachment and so on.
So the idea here is, why cannot I see when the scripture says you are that? Oh, yeah, you're right. Because of the extroversion of the mind. I like to use the example, you're at a pool party. Someone has a necklace and it drops into the water in the pool. And people, we can't see it. Why can't we see it? Because the surface of the water is agitated. So then someone says, everybody stand still or get out of the water. That causes the surface of the water to become still and transparent. Then someone says, oh, there it is, down by the 4-foot mark. So when my mind is agitated by likes and dislikes, when my mind is disturbed by trying to defend and protect a personal sense of self, I cannot see who I am. So I engage in these preparatory practices. The other example I like to use, I shower in the morning, and because there's no exhaust in the bathroom, the mirror is fogged. So if I want to shave or brush my teeth, I want to see my reflection in the mirror, I have to remove the steam on the mirror. I don't remove the steam on the mirror and then engage in some other activity to get my reflection into the mirror. All that need be done is remove the steam. Likewise, all we need do, quieten the mind, remove, abandon my false ideas of self. Neti, neti, not this. Because yourself is nitya mukta, already, eternally free. What do I mean by that? Were you ever not you? Always there. In my mind, I don't notice it. In my mind, I superimpose on that false notions of self, which afflict me. All right, it's noon. We'll quit here. What verse are we on for next week?
Verse 14.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all.